Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Loosely Coupled by Bridging the Gap. My name is Karol Skrzowski, and I'll be your host tonight. And hopefully, everybody has a nice cup of coffee, tea, water, Coke, whatever you drink at this hour. Well, I just spilled a little bit of my coffee all over the desk, so now it's cleanup duty. Uh, Today, also we're joined by my black senior of the house, 13-year-old cat called Balthazar. You've probably seen him in one of the streams previously if you've been watching those, hopping around. And today, about hopping, we'll talk about impact. What kind of impact are we making in terms of being architects, introducing changes, introducing bugs into the code, into the architecture, into our business processes, or just making changes because the business said so, right? All of these things have impact. And all that impact could be a lot better if we did impact analysis to actually understand what we're impacting, right? So to talk about that today, we're having Frédéric Meunier, and probably butchered it again. We'll see. Joining us, she's a Salesforce solutions architect from the Adecco Group and a big fan of impact analysis. So, Frédéric, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. If I give a quick introduction of myself,
Yes, please.
I've been working in IT for 7 to 8 years now. I used to be a communications manager before that. I worked in consultancy for maybe 3 years, and then I kind of stumbled into architecture, but not really. And I've been an architect for 4 years. I say stumble because I kind of knew very early on I wanted to be an architect actually.
Oh,
And this is kind of tied to the subject of today. Um,
pray
because,
tell.
yeah, I was a consultant for maybe 3, 4 months working for a client, and we had this massive bug, and nothing was working. Let's be more precise. The sales process could not go end to end. And we were working with the implementation partner. And what we found is that someone in the implementation did implement a validation rule on contact, which is seems small enough, right? Validation rule contact. We want data to be clean. This is business as usual.
Common thing.
Common thing, small thing, except in the way that client was working, it was very specific actually. Users were never working on contact, they were working only on opportunity where the sales process is started. So they create an opportunity, they create the contact, validate the opportunity, they can move on with the sales process. But because of the validation that was very specific, they could not validate that contact, and the opportunity could not be created without a valid contact. And if the opportunity was not created, there was no sales process after that. And basically, that blocked the company for one entire week. So yeah. That's when I became really, really, really interested in impact analysis and
Okay.
really curious about how you can do it, how you can foresee any impact when you are implementing a change, and how, when, what tool, to what extent, and how to explain it, how to demand it actually. And it's been a upward battle since then. And but this is a subject that keeps on giving, always, always,
Okay.
always. I have tons of horror stories and things that could have been actually avoided if impact analysis was properly done.
Hmm. Is there the question that comes to mind because I'm thinking of an example from my own career of where I was that junior developer that screwed up royally, and then later as an architect I fixed it like 5 years later. uh, but I'm not now looking at to try to classify this. Can we actually group impact analysis to like specific categories, or is that like specifically tied to change management?
That's a huge question. So it depends from which angle you're coming from. Um,
Mm,
I I would say as a developer, as an admin, as a consultant, you are in charge of developing a capability within the system. So you need to look around. You need to look at the landscape. You need to look at how does the domain work? What is the data strategy? Is there any integration? And what is the process end to end that you are going to change? If you are looking at it from an architect perspective, you're looking at it more from the top to bottom. Um, I know that as an architect, I have some reflexes, meaning that when we implement a change on a process that I know that is critical, I will right away list all the probable impacts and ask the development team to actually check those impacts and use
mm,
proper tools to check those impacts. Um, it depends really from which perspective you're coming from, but the most classicals are integration. Integration often is the one to bug actually.
right.
That would be any kind of automations. Obviously, if you are hard coding things, and let's say, again, a record type, this is the easiest example in the Salesforce ecosystem. If you are implementing a record type and that references to record types are hard coded, then you have to look at all the code that is referencing record types to make sure that you don't need to change those classes, or that
Fair.
you need to change them accordingly. And then if you change a class, you need to change the test class. So another impact. And then you need so if you introduce a record type, you need also to think, okay, who needs to access the records with that record type? So you are looking into visibility, you are looking into sharing, and it keeps on giving and keeps on giving. You are looking at the UI layer, then you need, are we impacting layouts, are we, and it keeps on giving. So
So
really, yeah.
would it be a fair statement that impact is directly correlated with coupling?
Yes, to a certain extent, because impact is within the system you're changing. And then if you're not if your system is tightly coupled with another system, yes, it's correlated with coupling, of course. If the
Okay.
integration was done in such a way that it's loosely coupled, then less so.
Right. So in that sense, it depends. Are we using anti-corruption layers? Are we
Yes,
using some abstractions to translate between models and not reuse the same models, etc., etc.? So the tighter the coupling, the more impact we can actually produce, and not the good kind of impact, the
exactly,
unwanted kind of impact.
exactly.
Because just to be clear, we're not talking about the impact of software on business per se, as in the positive aspect of the software developed for the business supporting the business. We're actually talking about the impact of changes in software on everything,
Yeah,
literally.
yes. And actually, how big it can be. So it can be small, and to some extent, I've worked on projects where, because the landscape and the system were so big and so old and legacies and different models coexisting together, our model was break it and then fix it. It
Mm.
was much faster. To be
That
honest,
seems fair.
it was much faster to actually see where it breaks, fix the break, and then move on, which is not always a good approach, to be honest.
No.
But in a more mature organization, where you do have models that are documented, where you do have strategies, where you do have decision trees, where you do have patterns, I would not recommend that. Absolutely not.
You break it, you fix it. Okay, yeah. Well,
And then you
if
have 40 architects calling you. Why did you do that?
Well, if you, I think if we reach the point where we need to actually be fixing things, that means that we didn't do impact analysis, right?
Yeah, but actually, just like when we were first discussing the subject, impact analysis is a choice. You don't do it by random, right? This is
Right.
this this is a choice, and there is that ongoing topic that is, do we need impact analysis all the time? I'm from the school that would answer yes. Many architects would answer no, and I think, well, it's not as dividing as pineapple on pizza, but I can tell you it creates a lot of conversations. My experience informs me that the smallest change can have the biggest impact, and not only on my former client who had the sales process blocked for 1 week.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that other architects consider minor changes in data model or in configurations not that not that big of a deal. So it really depends
Hmm.
on what's your perspective, actually. Uh, Carol, what's your perspective?
My perspective, I can show you my perspective. We actually, when working on the course and we were preparing advertisements for the course, now I'm just going to try to find the right post from LinkedIn. We actually did this lovely post some time ago. It's a small change, nothing else, right? And the small change just took everything down. And that's usually that's the perspective where I'm seeing as an integration architect, that a small change can really, 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 really kill things. Well, unless we have good abstractions and good anti-corruption layers, but even then we can screw things up.
Yeah.
The example I've been thinking in my brain, the small horror story that I did back when I was still a developer. At the time, we were running an integration platform that was still doing SOAP very commonly. REST
Mhm.
was non-existent. Microservices were non-existent. And we were having mostly either SOAP over HTTP or XML over JMS. The company we were doing this for figured that maybe we should actually switch internally within the integration platform to do SOAP over JMS,
Mhm.
uh, just for the I don't know, for the fun of it, standardization, whatever. That didn't pan through, but we started preparing for that purpose. And that meant we were doing a lot of XSDs and a lot of WSDL files. So we were building them in a way so we can easily make those XSDs into WSDLs when needed. So happened to be that we had a very large project related to sales channels, and the internal namespace from an XSD from the integration platform model
Mhm.
leaked to the interface. So it was the same namespace on the WSDL on the SOAP interface directed to the consumer. The impact of this was that no changes to those interfaces could have been made without substantial rewrite on all sides, because any change to that data model within the integration platform would constitute a change in all consumers, because all of the consumers were tightly coupled to the same exact namespace, which basically meant we had to do a lot more work to actually make things happen. We managed to fix it about 5 years later. I was already an architect. I absolutely knew why this was a very bad thing. But this is the consequence of not understanding the impact of such change. And well, I was at that time still a junior, well, media developer. I didn't understand everything, so I basically did what I was told. Well, not understanding an impact doesn't mean that the impact is not impactful,
Yeah,
basically.
indeed.
Uh, so it did impact the that area of the integration platform for a few years. Then we fixed it, and it was fine. But it took really some coordination between several systems to be able to fix that one impact. That one thing wasn't fun, but now I have fond memories because of it. So I would say impact analysis. The bigger the organization, the more common it should be, in my
Yeah.
opinion. And if I look back at my time spent in telco, uh, maybe we didn't call it impact analysis because that was basically release management. But release management, pretty much what they did was impact analysis. So they always identified all dependencies for every release and governed those dependencies so that they do not impact releases. So every deployable, every package was accounted for. Everybody knew when and how they should be deployed, which release they are assigned to. All of those were properly governed within versioning. We didn't have artifactories yet at that time, so that was SVN,
Mhm.
manual branching policies. But
Oh,
yeah, SVN
yeah.
didn't have branching policies as GitHub has, so
Hmm.
that was a completely different way of doing things. So completely manually created branching policies on SVN, and all of this had to be specifically placed into releases, code properly merged, and all of those dependencies were always governed centrally through a specific unit that just walked around the whole office and asked, "What are your dependencies to other systems? What is the impact of those changes that you're bringing? Who is going to be impacted by those changes? Who needs to be on alert during the release to test it or check for anything?" So that was the telco corporate way of doing basically impact analysis.
Yeah. Sometimes, everybody in the team say, yeah, it's, of course we need to do it. So its value is recognized, but when there is pressure, this is the first thing actually that is forgotten or pushed to the side. And because user stories have to be delivered, because because of release planning, because of uh, time pressure, because of all those good reasons. And it's really important that as architect we need to remind everywhere, 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 and to everyone that impact analysis needs to be done. It
Mm,
needs the time needs to be spent, and the actually in the definition of done, impact analysis should be part of it.
mm. To be honest, before we talked about this topic offline, uh, I'm really struggling to recall when last I heard the phrase impact analysis. It's so uncommon nowadays
Yeah, but
that
why?
it's like, exactly why. Now, from my perspective as a consultant, consulting architect, yeah, that's probably normal that I don't hear impact analysis that much because I come to advise on a lot of changes and strategy rather than actual change management
Mhm.
and dealing with those changes and implementing them. So that happens quite a bit. The longer I spend at one client, the bigger the chance I'll hear the words impact
Mhm.
analysis. But giving the strategic level where I operate at times, it's not exactly used. Impact is used, but in a completely different context in that sense,
Mhm.
right? But yeah, impact analysis. Maybe we should drop in a few other examples. What is this kind of impact that we're talking about in general in all sorts of IT systems? Um oh, impact, for example, a good thing. I was talking about a very nice workaround. Well, we were talking about that yesterday, actually. Long running
Yeah.
transactions.
Yes.
Uh, for those that didn't work with Salesforce, Salesforce some time ago, luckily not anymore, had this lovely license called long running transactions. Which extended the calls done from Apex. Apex custom code, I believe that's Java, right?
It's a Java weird.
Java like.
Yeah.
Okay. So from Apex, you could custom code a call to some sort of an API. And the unfortunate part of Salesforce at that time was that Salesforce limited the timeout on that call to 5 seconds. If you wanted longer, you had to buy a specific license called long running transactions, which extended the timeout to 30 seconds. From my perspective as an architect, that was pure and utter bullcrap.
Yep.
But they did that. They monetized on timeouts. It's like, what the hell's going on? Well, okay. The case we had was that the system that Salesforce tried to call via an integration platform had a response time of 3 to 7 seconds.
Yeah.
Literally 50% of the communication, depending, of course, if the response was cached or so, was timed out. 50%. Amazing. And if somebody would do impact analysis of changes and how this works and how this system responds, then we already would know not to implement a on-demand call to that system, because that wouldn't make any sense. But that call was implemented, then on production it turned out, oh, fantastic, it doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? It works 50% of the time. So what's going on? Where's the problem? And then we did a root cause analysis instead of impact analysis, and there we go. Salesforce is the problem. that was an interesting case.
Carol, timeout is the problem.
No, timeout was not the problem. The monetizing of the timeout was the problem.
Yeah, but just diverting a little bit from the topic, right? This is Salesforce is a technology about enabling business. This is not a charity. Of course, they are going to try to make money from anything they can.
Obviously.
Of course. But another one, fun one, they changed the policy, security policy for, it was recently, they changed the policy for technical users, and now technical users need to have a verified email address. Okay, but for automated testing, the user is not a human, so it's impossible to verify the address, and it caused a huge impact. It caused a huge impact in big clients, and they had to actually postpone the change. And my guess was that they did not even do the impact analysis of such a change, because when you do the impact analysis, you run through the processes, the users, the systems. I mean, literally in some, so maybe I'm seeing things through my lens, but in my impact analysis framework, I literally have a line which says which users are impacted. Like, this is the second line of the framework. Second line, which users are infected, and they did not even think about that. And my guess, and it's a guess, is that because this is a company that is trying to make money, like all big companies, they were trying to monetize something, and they were in the kind of break it and fix it. Like, they wanted to have the change being out. They wanted to start having this verification of emails to make sure that the platform is more secure, and then they were waiting for clients to come back to them and say, yeah, that does not work.
I would say that was just moving the cost of testing the change to the clients.
Exactly.
Cost optimization.
Cost optimization. I mean, from a business perspective, this is brilliant. From an IT perspective, this is not the best practice.
But, sales, in that sense, that kind of cost optimization sense, Salesforce was not the first company to do this. No. If you look at, I don't know about our audience, I don't know about you in that sense, but I'm a huge gamer. I absolutely love video games. My Steam library is too big for for my lifetime at the moment. There's just too many licenses there. Uh, a large number of AAA game producers, they do not test their games or not test them fully. They release betas, they release, I don't know, pre-sales,
Mhm.
whatever, and they basically test the games on players. So I do have plenty of games that during me playing those games, the games actually reached version 1. So
Hmm.
that, for example, a great example of such game was, I'm gonna actually bring up my Steam library. Give me a second because that's actually open on my computer, so it's gonna be very quick one. And that game is actually saved in my favorites. So let's see. The game is called 7 Days to Die. It's a zombie killing game, obviously. I have like over 1,000 hours in this game
Mhm.
just for the fun of it. I believe I bought this game. Now let's see. Is there a date somewhere? Probably is. The official release date of version 1 was uh, 25th of July 2024.
Yep.
Official. Uh, I have this game since 2013.
Wow.
It's an indie game, so obviously the development process takes time because the guy creating this game, the studio creating this game, they have other jobs in the meantime. They do it in the evenings to build it. But still, this is how long it goes for indie games, and indie games really rely on players to give feedback. Now, imagine that this is done with a title like, I don't know, Witcher, or uh, some other
Yeah.
big games. They
Yeah.
actually do that.
My
They
God. Yeah,
actually,
they do.
yes, they actually do that. They actually release the game. The first version, oh, Cyberpunk, great example from the same company, CD Projekt Red. They released Cyberpunk, and it was unplayable until they released the first patch.
My God.
Literally, people were pissed off because they bought the game in the pre-sales. They went, they waited for the release. They installed it, unplayable. That's why I have a personal rule for AAA games that I buy that game after 2 years after release, at least, because then it's sufficiently patched and DLCs are released. So then they actually give you a full game rather than something that you have buy add-ons on to and wait for the patches to come through. It just makes no sense because the practice is, oh, we're going to test it on players. Cost
Yeah.
optimization.
Yeah, and you know what? In companies, so switching the perspective, in companies, there is another optimization that is not favorable to actually impact analysis. Is that um, actually technical users of platform are not always considered as real users, meaning there is investment for business users, but there are no advocate for technical users. So, meaning
Mm.
when your technical users need a tool to actually do impact analysis, and there are a few ones, um, it's it's quite an adventure to actually make the company see the value in buying licenses for that tool. Because this is not a direct return on investment. This is a secondary return on investment. And you have to prove that having that tool and using that tool is going to reduce the cost of bugs, and it's going to reduce bugs.
Mm.
So it means that buying licenses for that tool, you need to track your bugs and you need to track the root causes of your bugs. And once you have done the business case for that, you need to put in front of that the number of licenses necessary, the cost per year, and then push the tool to be adopted by everyone in the team so that you are proven right. Otherwise, the impact analysis tool is pitchy for 1 year and then the company does not renew the licenses.
Right.
So it's, and during that year you are fighting for adoption of the tool and you are pushing the team to get the muscle memory for impact analysis. So the first year is really about pushing to get the framework adopted, to get the tool adopted, to get everyone on board actually,
Mm-hmm.
and making an effort to do the impact analysis. And then if you have not been good enough on impact analysis on the first year, then the tools you thought to have and the tools that actually make impact analysis faster are
Mm-hmm.
not renewed. Which is wonderful when you think about that. Um, when you
Yeah,
think about that, because once 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 the tool is removed and you are left with free versions or with less powerful tools, everyone is like, everyone goes, we had such a wonderful tool working with us and helping us in analyzing root causes and dependencies. And everyone's like, we should have used it more. Yes, yes, guys, you should.
no, you don't. But to to an extent, it's our own fault as techies.
Yeah.
To an extent, of course, because of course, yeah, there is a problem of, especially in companies that are not tech driven. I had I was very fortunate to work in a tech driven company to start my career with a T-Mobile Poland, which is a telco company. At the time, they weren't even T-Mobile; they were still ERA, which was bought by Deutsche Telekom later on.
Hmm.
Um, so that was a tech-driven company because everything relied on that IT department working really good.
Yeah.
So the maturity of that company was very high, very early on. I mean, high maturity companies in 2011, that was a rare gem. And I was lucky enough to start in such a company. So now I look at it with nostalgia when I see some of my clients with very low IT maturity really struggling with the basics. And in high maturity companies, it's easy because they understand that uh, having the right tools for the job will definitely make the job easier. In companies that are not driven by IT, in terms of the business is not driven by the core of the business is not IT.
Yeah.
This is always a problem because the IT department is always viewed as a cost rather than the benefit.
Yes.
And that's always a political struggle, unfortunately, and that's very painful and very problematic to justify, explain, etc. It's kind of a little bit like me talking to a business stakeholder about integration platforms. For a lot of business people, integration platforms is just infrastructure. Why
Yes.
should they care? Well, they should, because it's not infrastructure. But to explain that, I had to spend 15 years in the field to actually learn how to properly explain that to a business stakeholders so that they understand that this is actually added value. But
Yeah.
it takes a lot of effort. Uh,
I
and
have a story that would illustrate that point perfectly.
tell
Um,
me,
on a project where we were rolling out Salesforce in the country. They were trying to make us create double duplicates on contacts, and
okay,
which is bad practice, right? This is bad practice. You should not have duplicate contacts in your database. And business was adamant about it. We did it. It was and the question, the golden question is always why. Why? Because the first impact was obvious to us. Duplicate on the platform, that's not acceptable. And the answer was actually because our middle office only accepts the records with that form. And the difference between the two records would have been just a value on a field, which was crazy. And we
okay,
we had to push back. And this is where actually integration and the way integration is built is actually key. Is that all all the systems depend on each other, tightly or
true.
loosely. All the systems depend on each other, and all the systems have impacts on each other.
Yes.
When you have a new PG system, namely Salesforce, and then you have a legacy system that has a very archaic data model and a very archaic way of working, it's very easy to ask the new PG system to adapt. And actually, yeah, actually, this is our job as architects to explain why we should not adapt the new system, because we would be introducing duplicates, we would be enabling bad practices, and especially today, not that much then, but especially today, data and data integrity is key.
Yeah.
With AI and with everything, data as so it has always been extremely crucial, but today this is the goal. This is the goal. This is data, and we need to maintain data quality. Impact
Yes.
on data quality is not acceptable.
Hmm. I
Integration
think.
again. So explaining how why the integration strategy is key to business is an exercise that, and I do agree with you, Carol, it takes practice. That's an exercise that every architect should be able to do, actually. So, and not in technical, not in with technical lingo, but
Mhm.
with
With impact.
examples and similes and comparison that business can understand.
True.
So,
Uh,
yeah,
I think that from perspective of looking at modern architectures, well, first of all, the qualities of modern architectures is that we're more and more distributed.
yeah,
We have more fine-grained applications. We have a lot less really bulky, big applications. Even if you look at the Salesforce ecosystem, it's basically a composition of smaller applications that are within the Salesforce portfolio rather than Salesforce itself, right? Because they acquired new applications, they added to portfolio. These are absolutely separate applications that are
mhm.
incorporated, and they're like on feature flags. They're on and off depending on whether you have licenses to them, right?
Yes and
To
no.
an extent,
Yeah, to an extent, because some of them have been onboarded on the cloud. So when we say cloud, it means that it's on the Salesforce platform.
yeah,
But most of the time, we have a standard connector with the application.
yeah, because Salesforce did care for that to get
Yeah,
that
yeah.
done, so it's easy to use, easy to connect, right? And Salesforce itself is already very much distributed. Now, if you look at the all the rest of what's going on in IT overall, all of it is distributed. We have so many teeny tiny tools that we use all over the place: marketing, sales, order management, order fulfillment, warehouse management,
Mhm.
communication, HR. All those
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
areas, they have distinct tools, usually several of them. Now, the bigger the company, like let's say we have global networks of companies, like let's say PwC, Capgemini, EPMG, Deloitte. These are not. This is not a single company. This is a
Hmm.
single
Hmm.
brand
Yeah,
under which we have at times in one territory, in one country, you have several companies under that same brand.
yeah.
And within even within those separate companies, you have shadow ITs and you have different tools for different purposes within a specific line of business, etc. So even there we have functional duplicates, because those functional duplicates, while the core function is the same, they had like specific features that were very useful for that particular line of business, completely useless for another one. So another line of business is using a completely different tool. Large sprawl. What that means for data is also segmented, segregated, distributed. So that means we usually have a lot of mess in data. That's why, again, data governance becomes more and more important, basically,
Yes,
because we have more and more sprawl and more, uh, yeah, basically creating technological debt. And all of this is basically subject to impact analysis. So introducing
absolutely.
a new system,
Yeah.
Impact analysis, introducing a change in an existing system, impact analysis. Introducing a change in a legacy system, oh, such a humongous impact analysis. It's to the extent humongous, I believe, that, for example, in financial sector, in banking, people are literally scared to touch the mainframe
I
because of the
can,
impact it can do.
yeah, I can understand that. I also had a client who had
Mhm.
this humongous system that
Right.
was, in the beginning, that was a small CRM.
Hmm.
Then it became CRM plus ERP. Then it became CRM plus ERP plus middle office. Then it became
Woo!
CRM plus ERP plus middle office plus HRIS. And at some point, the system was so rigid that people could not do any change to that system without breaking something. So the story went that they went maybe for 5 years without changing anything, but that market shifted and they actually needed to make the system evolve. And they
Yeah,
tried to make the system evolve and it just blew in their face.
that's
And
typical.
coming back to the subject of impact analysis, of course, none of the changes had been documented. So there was no starting point for the team to start to
Hmm.
understand what were the precise capabilities, what were the dependencies, and which component was working with which component, and the so
It's
basically,
archaeology at this point, basically.
yeah, that's spelunking. Let's be honest.
Splunking, yeah.
Yes, that's spelunking, and they ended by completely decommissioning that system and rebuilding three other ones. Like
Yeah.
because they created something so big, so gigantic, it was impossible to manage. And of course, it was organically it was organically grown. There was not any architect that was involved in doing any of the changes because we're IP architects, right? Huh? No
So we were
document.
basically dealing with implicit architecture. Thank you. Yes.
Yes, and now uh, the last news I had from that client was that they understand that they need architects, but they still won't hire architects. So they put anyone from the company with the title of architect.
Oh, okay. That's definitely going to help. But well, that's learning in a trial of fire, basically.
Exactly. And it loops back to what you were saying is that impact analysis is the cherry on the cake of a very IT mature company.
Okay, fair. Uh,
Companies that do not have IT maturity, they don't even ask. They don't even think of doing impact analysis.
yeah, you can see that very often now in the smaller companies that are very product focused with
Yes.
product managers and all those product teams. A lot of the times, the conversations are, at least I as an architect literally experienced that I heard from stakeholders in such company. You're too strategic. We need tactical decisions now. We need to move fast. Well, fantastic, but you basically create implicit architecture through that, and you're going to suffer very, very, very heavily later on because you will have such rigidity that you will not be able to do anything.
And you know what got me thinking also is that I keep on seeing this advertisement on YouTube for Base 44. That
Oh,
company that claims to create full applications based on AI prompt without any code. And I'm like, how the hell is a company going to run its business with that in 5 years? Because there are no tech leads, there are no technical decisions, there is no sight of the flows, and I'm really curious to see how those applications will mature actually.
hmm.
Because when we are talking about AI and prompting, we are also talking about prompting skills. And I believe that it takes someone with a lot of IT maturity to actually generate a good prompt.
True. Because that requires awareness, that requires
Exactly.
knowing what you're doing, that requires the capability to build context.
Yeah,
And with context, you become aware of impact.
exactly. And I was wondering, so I did not look into that company simply because I don't have the time, but I was
Hmm.
wondering, so we are, Base 44 is claiming that with a simple prompt, they develop entire applications. I was wondering, do they also deliver documentation with those applications?
Interesting.
How can we assess the impact of a change to such an application beforehand, before typing a new prompt that will make the application evolve? And how can we roll back if users or if product do not like the result of that application? And how
That
do
would
we build
be very difficult to do.
Yeah, and how do we build integration with those applications?
That would be another very problematic aspect, yes.
Yeah,
And who owns the code base? Who owns the actual application? If somebody else build it and you have no means of going in, it's basically a black box.
yeah. And
I mean,
where's the
just
code?
for the fun of it, we'll
Yeah.
see in a moment because I just opened Base 44 just for the fun of it, logged in with my Google account, and typed in a prompt: "Build me an application for impact analysis." And it's
Oh,
going. It's going.
oh.
It said I'll plan out an impact analysis application before building, and it's just prompted out a plan, key features. It says dashboard, create, edit analysis, impact matrix view, details view. Yeah,
Well, that's the that's dashboarders, right?
yeah. So basically, it now said let me build this for you, and it's writing. It wrote two entities: impact analysis, impact assessment. It created some Tailwind config, and it's going
Okay,
some
but
some crazy stuff. It's actually telling what files it's writing. So we'll see what happens. By the end of the stream, probably it will yeah have something. I'll leave
let,
it be.
let me be annoying here. Do you think it's going to create an application for business impact analysis or for technical impact analysis?
I have no freaking idea what it's doing because obviously my prompt was shitty
Yeah,
as hell.
on
Because
purpose, right?
that's on purpose, of course, because that's how I test tools. I give it shitty prompts and see what it does with a shitty prompt without proper context. Because normally I wouldn't prompt like that because I prompt with whole yeah, I have whole agents built, for example, in Gemini, because I believe that I need to build context so that I get the output that is as good as possible, even though the LLM provides an average
Hmm.
statistical relevance. But that's another topic. Now, we'll see. I'll let it run, and we'll go back to it by the end of the stream and see what it actually did. It's actually writing now, editing. I don't know what it's doing. I'm just gonna hide this window, and we'll go back to it later.
Yeah,
So,
so you brought AI in the conversation. I think it's really
oof.
interesting because I used Claude AI. I think it was 2 weeks ago to draw diagram for impact analysis
Okay.
because I told you previously my stakeholders were distracted by Loopy, so I went to Claude AI.
Right.
And so to be honest, I did not have time to test because I have a lot of work these days. But I was thinking maybe AI could help, provided with enough context, to narrow down impact analysis, actually.
If
This,
provided with enough
yeah,
context, I believe
yeah,
it could potentially simplify impact analysis if we have documentation, which would be
yeah.
context for such a thing. If the documentation is up to date, which would be context for such a thing.
Up to date. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You see, you're already laughing. So basically, there we go. So that's the feasibility of it. Uh, yeah. Well, no idea. Uh,
But
AI is very useful. I find LLMs very useful in very narrow niche use cases,
so
not broadly useful.
yeah, coming back to base 44 because I'm really curious about it. It's still going, right?
No, actually, it finished.
So what did it produce?
All right, you're very curious, right?
I'm curious because I want to see the result of your prompt, and I want to
Okay.
see if it came with documentation and any technical diagram.
It actually came with code. Technical diagram? No. But okay, let me put this on screen.
So it means that we can feed that code to AI to draw the
So
technical diagrams.
yeah, like I said, the prompt was build me an application for impact analysis. That was the prompt, and it drew up a plan, blah blah blah, and then it went on. I'm writing this. From my perspective, if I would be somebody doing product design, this is then perfect because, well, we actually can do prototyping. So for prototyping, it's already a win.
Yeah,
Now, what it's and I'm going to hide the prompt part because you
yeah.
can obviously apparently you can hide it. So let's see. It made me some sort of a dashboard. There is some sort of an other dashboard, whatever this means. It's probably the admin access. Pretty much, you have users. Okay, you have data. Yeah, that's just some sample data it created. Assessments. Okay. Analytics. So this is basically a admin dashboard behind that. Okay, and then it has code. So it actually created some. I believe this would be JavaScript, possibly some CSS. Yeah, git ignore. Okay, so it's stored somewhere. We already have readme file, so it already put it. Well, it probably put it somewhere. Where exactly? I have no idea. So let's see. New analysis.
At least
Blah
we do
blah
have the code.
blah.
We do have the code, so that's good. Um,
Change type: technology, organizational, process, policy. Oh, it went actually quite broad.
yeah.
Okay, status. So it's basically a dashboard tool. It's not anything that
Yeah.
would actually do anything substantial. Let's create that analysis and what? Oh, it's that just that. Okay, so it didn't really do much, but it did work and it did create code. So yeah, you could assess this and tell, okay, the impact of using such tool is might be positive for a process of development or a prototyping, but yeah, it still would have to go through people to validate what it actually produces. So and in impact analysis, I think the more annoying part is the actual use of AI because it's very hard to determine. It's not non-deterministic, right?
Yep.
So what changes we do to a model or what our prompt will make changes if we have AI agents willy-nilly hooked into our actual IT systems, that would be very problematic to analyze any changes in model, any changes in AI agent and the LLM, what that LLM does underneath.
So actually, that point was part of my presentation in Poland last conference.
Hmm.
Yeah, that there is a shift in the architecture work, that we need to shift from something that is deterministic, if A equals B, to something that is probable and that involves in human in the loop. And the way you do it is that you do more and more and more and more testing until you obtain a behavior that is actually compliant with what your expectations are.
To what degree?
Yeah. So you need to determine that.
Ah.
You need to, so it's a real shift in mindset, actually. It's a real shift in mindset. And it touches what the job of architect is and how it's going to evolve with AI. And we're in
Hmm.
a very, very interesting period now that as architects, we need to work with both mindsets, with the deterministic one, but also with the probabilistic one. And because we're architects, we have to guide through that change, which is kind of tricky because we are going through the change at the same time.
Hmm. Interesting. I would have a different take on that.
Please share.
Uh, from even tying it down to impact analysis is if I'm looking at, and again, if I'm looking at integration platforms per se and movement of data and utilization of services, given that as an integration architect I mostly work with data and services, right? Uh, how can I make the behavior of a specific system that is non-deterministic more deterministic by catering services and data? So actually providing very good governance over uh, integration and over
Mm,
data and over exposed services, and then governing access to data and services to specific agents, and how I can reduce the blast radius of those agents if I do that correctly with the integration and data governance. Now, I'm not a data architect, so obviously data governance is not my forte.
mhm.
But then again, as an integration architect, I understand how much of a value is proper exposition of services to the right uh, consumers with zero trust in mind as a principle, and proper abstractions to minimize the scope of data and sprawl of data. And kind of through that, I'm looking at impact analysis. How can I mitigate the impact of LLMs utilizing services on the whole IT ecosystem, and how I can minimize the blast radius if something goes wrong, whatever that may be.
Yeah. So, yeah, I get your point, and I think it also comes back to testing and testing and testing and testing again until until the project end to end gets the results that are expected um,
So
enough
I
time.
wouldn't call it testing. I would call it model fine tuning.
Yeah, still it's testing. You are configuring your agent. Um, yeah, we are you're configuring your agent. You're giving it guidelines. You're giving it guardrails. You're giving them ways to communicate, channels that they can access,
Hmm.
and you put the services in front of that, and you need to test the behavior enough that you get the behavior you expect,
Hmm.
knowing that the agent is going to make decisions.
Based on statistical average relevance
Exactly,
of whatever
exactly.
is prompted within that agent.
So how do we minimize the blast radius of change of LLM? First of all, we track which LLM we are using for our agents. First of all, and second of all, we test again.
Mm.
So
So so that
maybe,
makes it a very different impact analysis of, for example, what is the impact of using a different LLM,
yeah.
right? Uh, to give an idea for some people, maybe because some people just use ChatGPT, Gemini, or whatever without considering these kind of things, just prompting in out, and you never hit the guardrails. Really, a lot of people don't. I do adversarial prompting, so for the fun of it, or prompt injection for the fun of it. It's really testing the guardrails on the LLMs, but there are other aspects that are really, really not seen for a lot of people. Uh, some of my colleagues were pondering on LLMs, for example, working with agentic AI and LLMs
Mhm.
in public sector. The story that I've been told some time ago was pondering on the use of LLMs within police
Mhm.
for various police cases. Now, the fantastic thing was that they were discussing actual police cases over a call, and one of the lovely LLMs provided by one of the providers of office applications was making a transcription and then summarizing. So it happens to be that they were talking about some crimes that were, well, to a certain extent, very graphic.
Ooh.
Uh, After the call, they looked at the summary, and two-thirds of the call was gone. They looked at the transcript; it was there. Summary, non-existent. Summary was made by an LLM. Apparently, during the call, they hit a guardrail that prevents the LLM from processing that kind of data, that kind of topic, that kind of conversation. And now, how do we analyze that kind of impact of implementing that kind of
Yep.
tool, non-deterministic, with no known guardrails, because those guardrails are baked in by the creators, but they're not made known to us. And different LLMs will have different levels of guardrails in different areas. Looking at DeepSeek, anything related to the Chinese Communist Party, it's going to always hit a guardrail. Looking at Grok, from I believe that's the one from Elon Musk, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, well, there are no guardrails apparently, right? Looking at Copilot from Microsoft or Gemini, there are going to be definitely different guardrails that are baked in based on the probably political views or socio-technical views of the creators. What's their mindset? And that's going to be probably not visible for a lot of users, but may be very much impactful on business, depending what that business is. So, starting from this, and I'm going to bring us back to the topic
Mhm.
because we went off rails drastically, which
This
is the
is
normal thing on
this is
Loosely
the title of the stream, right? Loosely coupled.
Obviously, I'm still recalling the first stream where we were talking about the adoption of event-driven architecture, and midstream we were talking about psychological health in organizations and the
Yeah.
impact of psychological health. Disregard. So, if impact analysis is so important, let's not get into why it's not done because we already established that it
Mhm.
requires maturity and awareness that it is
Mhm.
important, and that awareness comes with said maturity and growth of practices. So how can we actually approach impact analysis? Let's say we're a medium-sized company, we never done impact analysis. We have about 20 domain systems. Where do we start?
That's a huge question. I would say hire an architect, but this is trolling.
Well, okay, but let's say we have somebody that grew into the position of architect, right? Because architects are not born, they come from development, they come from business, they come from sometimes from sales, apparently. So let's say we have a homebrewed architect that came from development. That person knows all about the IT systems because they were there from the conception of those systems. Um, how do we start doing impact analysis? Let's say we have a somewhat good architecture, not fully implicit. Some of it is somewhat documented because somebody figured, well, we need to start documenting. What can we do to start avoiding the nightmare of impactful changes that blew up in our faces on a Friday afternoon?
At 5 p.m.
To be fair, all releases in T-Mobile were done over the weekend, so I always had fun weekends.
Yeah.
But that was the operational model for that. Normal companies don't do releases on Fridays because everybody wants to have a weekend. Okay, so where do we start? What do we
So
do?
um, the way I would approach that is, with the circles of influence, because
Hmm.
we don't know what our architect has been working on, right? So what is the system that is impacted the first? What are the users that are impacted the first in that system? What are the processes that are impacted the first in that system? Is that system a domain system? And start from that. We start from that. And from that, we kind of have a first high level impact analysis. So let's say we are impacting marketing users that are creating campaigns.
Hmm.
We know the system, we know the users, we know the process. This is marketing campaigns. So marketing campaigns, where are we? Marketing campaigns, you go from the query in the database to actually sending the campaign,
Hmm.
and even maybe having an automated journey based on recipients' behavior, right? So on that process end to end, you need to understand where the change stands. It can be on the contact table, very beginning. It can be on the journey automatization, almost
Hmm.
the end of the closing the loop. That's the first. And then from your system, you look at the data. You look at the data. Usually, the data is what causes the most obvious impacts. You
Right.
look at the data. If it's
You
not,
just
yeah.
you just reminded me that I did send you a link earlier on today. I actually found a post by one of our previous guests, Andrew Jones, who's a data architect, a quite well-known UK data architect, author of a book on contracts. He's very active in the
Mm-hmm.
data mesh space, etc. I'm just going to bring it up on screen for the second. What does it mean when we say data producers must take responsibility for the data?
Mm-hmm.
More importantly, do they know what it means? Do they know why
They
it's
don't. Yeah.
important? It needs to be explicitly stated what their responsibility is. And then he goes on to explain that breakages of downstream data applications is basically, yeah, 37% of data incidents caused by schema changes. So basically, if we change data, if we change schemas, that's always a humongous impact. So tying it back to what you were saying, yeah, we look for that, right?
Yeah, the first usual suspect, it's not the only one, but the first usual suspect is always a change in data.
Mm. So
Uh,
if I could just summarize the starting point. So we're looking what the change is,
yeah,
where the change happens, and then we're looking at three aspects: the technical aspect, the users impacted, and the business process.
yes.
Okay.
So for me, that's the kernel, right?
Hmm.
That's the kernel. And then you
That's where
can,
the bomb drops.
yeah. And from that, so we are IT people. Then from that kernel, um, you can look at the blast radius of your change, right? So you can look at the integration, you can look at the automations, you can look at the validations. So if we are talking about exchanging data, of course you are going to ask the questions of the data lifecycle. Who is creating that data? Who is updating that data? Who is deleting that data if there is any deletion? What is the frequency of that? What is the volume of that?
Hmm.
If we are talking about documents, what is the size of documents? And when we are talking volume and size, we are also talking about, guess what, integration and timeout. So,
Yeah.
if you pull the thread, it keeps on giving. It keeps on giving. And so then you look at the automations. What are the automations? Are the automations low code? Are the automations strictly based on code? Where is the code sitting? What are the dependencies? This is where we want to use tools to go much faster, right? So first, the first level when we are looking at the kernel of the change, documentation is key actually, and
Mm-hmm.
having a good documentation can help you go very fast. I love good capability maps. I love use cases diagrams. I love sequence diagrams, system diagrams, anything that will tell me what is the representation that the team had of the system. And then you need to go more granular, right? System diagram is only gonna go so far.
Yeah.
And the assumption is you have a good diagram, not a diagram that is mixing 5 levels of information.
Right.
Um, so, and then you can narrow down your search. Because impact analysis, you do it in two instances. First instances, you're trying to mitigate the blast radius, like you said. So you're trying to list all the possible impacts and mitigate before the bomb detonates.
Mm-hmm.
Second instance is you have a bug and you're looking for where the break happened.
So basically, root cause analysis.
Yes. But my way of saying it is funnier. Root cause analysis is just devoid of its cause, right?
Yeah.
So, and
But
then,
sometimes the root cause is not in code.
well, it can be actually.
It can be, but it doesn't have to be.
Yes,
Sometimes it's in a change of a user behavior.
yes,
And
but that's not always the case. So,
no.
there was one of the stories. Look, we have another architect here.
Hey!
Um, that's one of the stories that um, when I was a consultant, we have this huge bug at one of my clients, and the users were actually not happy at all.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a good example for impact analysis that can go beyond technical. And actually, what was happening is that they had not understood uh, how to approve an approval request because the button had been moved on the layout.
Oh, okay.
So technically, everything is correct, but the impact was on the users themselves. There was no change management that had been done. There were no training. So
Mm-hmm.
what was not a bug but a feature ended up being a bug because communication was broken. So impact analysis is not only technical impact analysis. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and if I may divert from our subject, technical impact analysis, actually, when you build the mind muscle to do impact analysis, you can transpose it in your life. You can actually see something moving, something changing, and your mind that has done so much impact analysis will go, yep, it's going to come back to me this summer because I will be lacking of that.
So you're basically saying we could compare impact analysis and this thinking in terms of impact to a huge Rube Goldberg machine.
Yes, or crisis aversion.
Okay. So domino effect. Here we go.
Yes, exactly. But I think this is the same. That you need to build your mind muscle, like a developer needs to build the mind muscle for abstraction. Actually,
Mm-hmm.
it's something that you learn by doing, and it ties back to the conversation we had prior to actually launching the stream. Is that impact analysis is such a big topic, but it's still very organic, still very empiric. No one has written a book about that,
Hmm.
at least in IT. I'm a big book lover. So I have a lot of books. I never found one on impact analysis. Never.
Okay. Um, I have a lot of books that I still need to read, but one that comes to mind, I'm not sure exactly, is that precisely on impact analysis, but there's one on an impact called impact mapping, but that's
Yep.
mostly on the impact the software can bring to the business, as far as I recall. So a bit of a different angle to it, but probably something to learn from either way. So, but it does give some tools, for example, creating impact maps. And I think this is already something to a larger extent useful to work with. Um, Again, on my very long list of reads, because my lovely ADHD bars me from reading very long texts, so it's not exactly that easy to plow through some books, but one book and not exactly on point. So
So you know what it means. That's the book we need to write.
hopefully someday.
Yep, if we have time. So, Carol,
Fair enough.
big strategic question. My chips are nature. Which is the flavor of yours?
Um, my chips. Paprika smack.
Ooh,
So it's rice cookies. We're neuroatypical as hell, so we both snack, right? That's the
exactly.
premise.
Yeah, yeah.
It is what it is.
It is what it is.
Right. So, okay. So if we're looking at blast radius. So blast radius, as with bombs, I've seen plenty of lovely diagrams about atom bombs, blast radiuses. It basically is that circle of influence where what reaches.
Mm.
So if we're looking at, okay, the kernel where the bomb drums is where the change happens, where something happened, for example, in production, something that we didn't want, or we're mapping out before we actually introduce change, and we're trying to find out what is the impact, which is basically which system is impacted first, what users are impacted first, and what processes are impacted first.
Yes.
And okay, we can do that we can do that manually, so we can look into the code and start figuring it out. Or we can do it by documentation, by analyzing, by having that proper documentation, diagrams, system diagrams, capability maps, provided that they're actually good quality, which is not always the case, and they're up to date.
And I think also this is the point where we can introduce impact analysis tools. And actually, you have great tools, at least at the Salesforce ecosystem, that help you identify the dependencies.
Oh, right. Because the next step is basically going to the outer circles, which are the
Yeah.
dependencies of that particular change for that
Exactly.
particular system, business process, and users.
And
Right?
yes, and regarding integration, you have traces of these dependencies in the code actually. So you
Okay.
can find that, but you need a good tool because so when I say good tool, it's a tool that goes beyond actually calling Salesforce APIs.
Okay.
Because Salesforce APIs will only provide you with a certain level of information. So
Okay.
there are some of the tools that will actually extract the metadata from your system
Mm-hmm.
and run analysis on your metadata, identify all the dependencies, provide visualization of these dependencies, and provide maps actually of impacts.
Yeah.
But those are not free tools. Um,
Um, I believe that if we're roaming about the Salesforce ecosystem, and then MuleSoft being part of the Salesforce ecosystem as a integration product, I believe that one of the native capabilities baked into the Anypoint platform, which is not something that is very common with other integration technologies, is just
mhm,
specifically
mhm.
MuleSoft, is that based on metadata of communication between various Mule apps that report to the to Cloud Hub as a control plane. I believe there is one view somewhere there in the control plane that actually creates that map of dependencies between various MuleSoft applications based on those metadata and those logs of
Yeah,
actual use.
but that's in the integration layer, not on the
Yeah.
system. So going from the first kernel to the next one actually requires IT maturity. First
Yeah.
kernel can be done by any business user that is knowledgeable about enough about the system, any BA that is not that has more than 6 months experience, right?
Okay.
But going deeper into the technicalities and asking questions about the integration layer, about what are the capabilities in Microsoft to actually identify dependencies, or do we have volume problems, do we have heap size problems, that requires someone that is more technical. And in terms of a description of positions, that would be senior dev or tech lead or an architect. And most of the time, I see that the most relevant impact analysis I have seen are done by senior IT people because they have built the muscle. Um,
Mm.
Unfortunately, some junior professionals, because this is not the fun, shiny stuff, they tend to treat it as something mandatory. That when if you have a framework or if you have a list that you have to go through, they will answer to the first three questions, so the first kernel, and then they will say no to all the other ones because they want to skip that.
Mm.
And when I say it needs maturity, because you need to be senior enough to understand that working on your feature is not enough. You actually need the big picture, and
Right.
that comes with experience. It's not about young professionals not wanting to do the work right. It's about having enough experience to understand that you need to look around you before working in the granular way on your feature.
Yeah, that comes with time. It's
Yes.
basically the, let's say it's the embodiment of so-called Dunning-Kruger effect
Mm.
to an extent. But also, I'm always joking that my favorite answer in architecture is it depends.
Yes.
I literally used that yesterday in a workshop. Um, and I tend to gauge somebody's seniority by the answers they give. If somebody gives me a definitive answer to a broad question, then basically I would say, well, probably a junior. If somebody says it depends and leaves it at that, well, that's a meteor. And then if somebody gives me an answer, it depends, and starts explaining what are the variables and depends on what. Oh, that
Yes.
I'm talking to somebody who've seen stuff and got experience. So they build already that process, that way of thinking to see the bigger picture. Uh, from the perspective of an integration architect, if I'm tracking dependencies, and this sometimes is very tasking and horrendous depending on that IT maturity. Uh, I'm not working with users or UI per se, because integration platform middleware, I'm working on a data movement between systems, right? So mostly operations on data and moving data from somewhere to somewhere or enabling services. The things I'm always looking for and trying to enforce is metadata.
Yep.
uh, Message ID, correlation ID, business process ID, if maturity enables and we have actually identified, mapped, and inventoried business processes, timestamps, any other unique type of data that we can transfer and use as metadata for any log aggregation tool to process later and make it searchable. And making it searchable basically can create a map of dependencies.
Mm.
Because if we can correlate different logs from different places, we already see those dependencies of different things. And if we assign to that data models, data objects, data products, we already see what data is impacted where, right? So that already creates a large thing. Then if, of course, we have the metadata of a business process, what kind of business process this is, then we already know which business processes are impacted.
Yep.
Now, did I see that often in my 15 years of integration career? Yes and no. Uh, the fields are there, but I've seen domain systems invoking APIs and just constantly giving the same value for a correlation ID because they hard coded that value on call. So what was done in the integration layer? There was that field correlation ID as an HTTP header, which
Mm.
always had the same value. So somebody else created a true correlation ID field, which was always generated when the API was called. Is that of value? Does that create a good basis for impact analysis? Well, no.
Yes and no, because no, you,
No, because you don't have the full picture.
yes,
Yes, because you have picture from that API onwards.
yes, but also because impact analysis would reveal that actually, and
Mhm.
that it needs to be fixed. Um, and this is something we have not said since the beginning of this stream. Impact analysis is not a magic wand, actually. This is
No.
something that needs to be decided, and this is something that needs to be done regularly.
Mm.
And it ties to making sure that your system and your landscape does not have a huge technical debt, so that things are clear enough so that we can run a quick impact analysis later on. And it all ties back to IT maturity, actually.
Hmm.
And I completely agree with you, but the instances are different. When I speak at conferences and someone is asking me a question, I can tell the IT maturity quite straight away. When they are looking for a yes no answer or for a very definitive answer, this is either an IT executive or manager that just want the answer to one problem and does not want to go granular in the analysis, or a junior IT profile. Um,
Mm.
because just like you said, it depends. It depends on
Yes.
the parameters which with oh my god, this is late. It depends on the parameter with which we are playing.
Yes.
And
Or the number of variables, basically.
yes, no, no, yes, the variables. And the fact is that impact analysis is a bit like a probiotic. It doesn't work on the first time, but it builds up.
Okay.
It builds up, and like a probiotic, it makes your system and your team more efficient and more enabled to actually protect the system and protect the landscape and make and contribute to the well-being of the global processes.
Hmm.
I will quote myself on that. Impact analysis is like a probiotic. I think that's a good
Yeah,
one.
well, you could even create a short from that. I mean, the recording is there. You do what you will. Um, I think there's a very nice analog to this because you basically stated that impact analysis needs to be iterative,
Yes.
and the same is said about architecture. Architecture is not a one-time thing; it's iterative. Especially the part of trade-off analysis, set in context of the business we're doing.
Mm.
So how IT systems, how this current architecture supports IT systems. So if we already are building up the practice of doing architecture iteratively, that goes hand in hand with doing impact analysis iteratively.
Yes.
So looking at what happens if, and then place the variables in.
Yeah. But impact analysis is on everything. It's not only when you are changing the system. It can be done when you are trying new testing methods. It can be done just like you said when we said we are moving a button on the UI. Um, that's
Yes,
really
from
a
small
way,
things to very,
yeah,
very strategic decisions,
and
basically.
that's a way of thinking. We have a saying in Salesforce ecosystem is that Salesforce is not an island, and The same goes for the smallest change. This is Everything is connected. Absolutely
Mm,
everything is connected, and taking that into account actually, this is my belief, makes you a more skilled professional, because you get the mindset of, oh, I'm putting a change here, I'm gonna check if we do have an impact, and if we
mm,
do have an impact, how can we estimate the mitigation? Do we
mm-hmm,
And then, do we accept the risk? Do we accept the risk? What route do we change? Do we choose? Are we doing the mitigation route? Are we doing the break it and fix it route? This is why you need high level impact analysis to actually inform that choice, right? So, um, and in some instances, to be honest, break it and then fix it is the easier one.
especially if we're dealing with legacy code that is undocumented, and
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of things can go wrong. Um, Now that we talk about it, it kind of opened up a drawer in my head with this connotation that impact analysis is basically very much tied to residue theory by Barry O'Reilly. I don't know if you were ever had ever the chance to listen to Barry O'Reilly speak about residues and
Mhm.
philosophy of architecture. Great talks, by the way. Really, for a lot of people, they're basically um, eye openers. And I remember that remember our shared colleague Philip going to one of those talks from
Mhm.
Barry, and basically went out like, I don't know who I am anymore. This kind of feel, right? Because it was so impactful on his way of thinking. Now, now that I think about it, residue theory, to a to some extent, is basically impact analysis. Uh, Here's why. Barry is postulating that we're to make architecture work. Uh, you need to think about what remains from your architecture,
Yeah.
from your working IT ecosystem when something happens. So he postulates some really absurd exercises at times. So what happens if Godzilla comes and stomps on your data center? What's the residue?
Yeah.
What's left
Yeah.
of your IT ecosystem? Or what happens if a flood comes in? Or what happens if you're cut off from electricity? Or what happens if the system breaks? What is the residue? So basically, this is pretty much an impact analysis done in quite a fun way.
It's a preemptive one, like.
Preemptive. Preemptive. So if you do it, again, doing impact analysis preemptively, iteratively, without the change and without a problem that we're solving, it basically ties it down to residue theory, because
Yeah.
it's preemptively we're thinking about what remains of our architecture, and we're adapting our architecture towards being more resilient. At least that is the thought that popped into my mind during our conversation. Now, I'm yet to go to Barry O'Reilly's training to actually learn about residue theory. I mean, it's expensive, so I don't have the budget for it now, but hopefully someday I'll be able to attend. Or Barry maybe will come to Loosely Coupled and we'll talk about residues.
Yeah, that would
Uh,
be that would be good.
Barry, if you're listening, please, please, please.
Please.
Yeah.
So, if the screen is moving, I do apologize in advance. My cat has decided to bite actually the screen of my computer.
That's fine. For the moment, it's pretty stable, and I see that my cat also got a little bit lively. He's just went off from his pillow, so
I think she's a bit jealous that I'm giving you guys so much attention and I'm not paying attention to her. Um,
that happens.
yes, yes, that does
All
happen.
right.
But
So going back to impact analysis as this. Okay, when it should be done, we already established preemptively with change management, or when we're doing root cause analysis because
Yeah,
something went wrong. So basically, and that goes then to actual change management again because we need to bug fix, right?
yeah.
So other than utilizing documentation, capability maps, diagrams, etc., and doing that investigation, what tools or methods can we utilize to do impact analysis? And I know, broad question.
Yes. So I would say, because impact analysis is iterative,
Mm-hmm.
you should actually build your framework of impact analysis and your own
Mm-hmm.
method. Um, this is very every company is different, and every company does things in its own way. So build the method that fits your business context. Just like I said, this is not a magic wand. This is not one size fits all,
Mm-hmm.
because different business, different company size, different landscape. But as an architect, when you are doing iterative architecture and iterative impact analysis, build on what works and what doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we did in my company, and actually, to we have a very simple framework that is in three phases. Um, what can be done by BAs, what can be done by solution analysts, what can be done by tech people. We list all the things that need to be reviewed,
Mm-hmm.
and when tech people are involved, they are using tools, um, and we kept it simple because that was the way to adoption. We could have made it way more complex,
Mm-hmm.
but it was not palatable to the team. And when you are building such method, building method is fine. Documenting the method is better. Getting
Mm-hmm.
adoption of that method is the ultimate goal. This is the end
Right.
goal. And if it's too complicated, if it's too long to read, what will the development teams do? They won't do it.
Yeah.
TLDR, TLDR, man. So, uh, again, build your own. Like, build your own. I like the term of action research. I don't know if you like that. You know action research?
No.
So, action research comes from actually social sciences, and it's researching the way you work or your project while you are working on the project. So,
Mm-hmm.
some people would call that functional analysis, but it goes a bit deeper because, and at some point, you look at what you've done, maybe during the week or during the month. You look at what was successful, what can be improved. You list the ways to improve what can be improved, and you test it in the next round. So you're researching, you're observing the behavior, you're looking for potential improvement, and you're testing the improvement right away.
Mm-hmm.
Does it work? Does it not work? Does it work? Yes. I keep that. And then I keep implementing, and you keep on building on that. And action research,
This
actually,
pretty much sounds like the right use from for a Scrum sprint,
yeah.
because you literally have all those tools for that. And it just popped up an image of action research just out of Google. It says planning, acting, observing, reflecting. So if we map it down to a Scrum sprint, well, we have sprint planning. We do the sprint. We may observe what's happening during
Mhm.
the sprint, so analyzing, reporting, whatever. And then we have the ceremonies at the end of the sprint, reviews, etc., which basically means that we should be reflecting.
And tracking, also tracking KPIs. This is really important because
Mm.
having something nicely written on Confluence is one thing,
Mm-hmm.
Being able to have a positive impact is the second one. And
Mm.
the entire goal of all that thing and why we have been talking for more than 1.5 hours is to have a positive impact on the project, on the
Right.
IT projects. So you want to define when you are doing action research, and you want to define what are your KPIs. What is your end goal? What do you want to do? It's not
Mm-hmm.
action research for the fun of action research. It's actually kind of building a strategy, to and in an iterative way to achieve a goal.
Mm.
So, impact analysis, what are the usual KPIs? Bugs, number of bugs, severity of bugs, and root cause of bugs.
Right.
Obviously, you want those three KPIs to diminish,
Right.
and you want adoption actually. So, adoption of the framework to rise. That's another KPI.
Mm-hmm.
And you want also, so if you have time on your hands, you want to document the number of user stories that were actually including impact analysis. So
Okay.
that's another thing. And if you really have time on your hand, you want also to document the quality of the impact analysis, because having the dev, not only the dev team but the IT team, copy and paste basically the questionnaire they need to answer, and giving any answer is not working. So this is also how you measure adoption. Is
Mm.
then the IT team understanding they need to do it is one step. The second step is what is actually the quality and the attention that is given to this topic.
Okay, but I'm in my brain it's like KPIs, KPIs, KPIs. But I'm looking from, for example, from a business perspective, and I would say one of the KPIs is, for example, the number of outages, the number of hours the product was unavailable, the monetary loss
So
or the monetary gains,
yes,
the number of deliveries that happened or didn't happen because of whatever was impacted, the number of users impacted. It really, I think, it really depends on the scope where you are at in the company in terms of that practice.
exactly. And that's why I said to each your own. It's not a magic wand, and it's not one size fits all. Um,
Right.
Obviously, what we've done in my company is tailored to the projects that we are managing and the team we are working with. If I were to change company, I believe that impact analysis would be completely different.
Mm, that makes sense. During impact analysis or that iterative process of action research, other than doing that action, observing, reflection,
Mm-hmm.
would you say there are any specific artifacts that can be produced
Oh, jeez.
deriving from said iterative approach to impact analysis, that preemptive approach to impact analysis?
Actually, there is not, Carol. No, I mean, and I've been researching that topic for a long time. There is no book, there is no foundational
Right.
anything on impact analysis. This is still very much organic.
But from your perspective, if you're doing impact analysis, do you create any deliverables from impact analysis?
It depends. I don't create deliverables. I create
Hmm.
proofs.
Proofs. Okay,
Yes.
let's say that's the deliverable. So what
Yes.
would that be?
So, proofs of the researchers.
Hmm.
So, proof of the kernel research.
Hmm.
So, we have tools for that. Proofs of the dependencies. Proof of, for example, if I just want to, I would just want to highlight that one change has a huge impact without going granular, right? Because I'm
Hmm.
not a tech lead. I would take that piece of metadata, put it in one of our impact analysis tools, and see the number of results that pop up with that metadata.
Okay.
You have one metadata, two instances where it's used. Okay, it's only two instances. Then you need to look into those two results to understand if each of the results is a big impact. But
Right.
let's say you have in Salesforce one of the main field that has a huge impact is actually billing address on account.
Mm-hmm.
This
Right.
is this is the heart of the CRM, right? You put that metadata in an impact analysis tool, and let's say it's a tool that is quite mature. You're going to
Mm-hmm.
have hundreds of results because of the integration, because of the automations, because of the reporting, because of the validations, because of anything you can think out. So, and billing address is a standard field. Any change you want to bring to that to that field is going to have
Mm-hmm.
a huge impact. And
Right.
to document that huge impact, I just need the number of results in the tool.
Okay. Then, but right. But billing address is not metadata; it's actual business data. The problem with
No, I was
business
talking about
data,
I was talking about the field, any field. You know
yeah,
where you take the API name of the field, but not only be a billing address, any field. That's the metadata. Let's say you want to change the type of the field,
yeah,
and you want to measure the impact of that change. This is a relatively small change, right?
yes,
But this is a dangerous one.
of course.
So you
Any
get
change to a data model is a dangerous change, usually.
exactly. So you take that piece, you put it in the impact analysis tool, and you see the blast radius. It will give
Hmm.
you it will give you the blast radius. I don't need to go in each of the results to understand that the blast radius is going to be huge. I just need the
Right.
volume of results that come back.
Okay, but uh, how do you build up to have that knowledge in an impact analysis tool, whatever that tool may be? Because if I'm looking, and then this is my perspective of an integration architect.
Hmm.
If I'm looking at actual business data, so the aforementioned billing address, for example, billing address is not always named billing address. In different systems, it may be called differently,
Yeah.
maybe formatted differently. The attribute name may be formatted differently, which basically means that this is not a metadata uh, that's very much trackable based on the code base. Because if you look at, let's say, Salesforce
Hmm.
and the data models in Salesforce, custom fields in Salesforce have this underscore underscore C,
Yep.
which is non-existent in other systems. If you start using those fields to track the sprawl of data,
Hmm.
you will not find anything, right? And if you work with SAP, especially very old SAP like R3, data models in R3 were not human readable because they were in German and abbreviated.
Oh my god.
Yes, and they were horrendous, right? I worked with SAP back in the day with R3. Now the sub for HANA is a lot better because they're actually in English and not abbreviated, so they're actually human readable. But in R3, you need a SAP specialist to tell you what the hell that field means because it was not readable. Nobody else other than an SAP specialist could actually read that field, which means, again, you cannot really track that because those distinct systems will have different data models.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's the integration layer mapping between those. So you'd actually have to pool a lot of information from all anti-corruption layers, wherever they may be, in systems, in the integration platform,
Yeah.
and map that out to actually have. So the in that sense, if we're using actual business payloads and fields and data from
Yeah.
business
Yeah.
payloads, that would basically mean that we first need to have data governance in place.
Yes. So to come back to your question, how do I see the impact through several systems.
Hmm.
Um, you said it yourself, documentation and team collaboration.
Mm.
Because as a Salesforce architect, as a solution architect, I do not have the knowledge of an SAP architect, and I
True.
don't know, that billing address in Salesforce is mapped to whatever field in SAP. So coming back to what I was saying in the beginning of the session, this is where you really try as an architect to identify the end-to-end process.
Mm.
Meaning, before going granular, if you had time and if you thought about it, so with experience, to think about it, right? You're trying to track the data. Meaning, how do I create the data? How does it live in my system? Does it does it go in another system? Does it go through the integration layer? So integration layer, mapping, orchestration. How does that data live in the other system? And is there a
Mm.
third system? And is there a backend? And is there a storing system? So you're pulling the thread,
Right.
and the
So,
question and the main question is, when you are doing impact analysis, what is your scope of impact analysis? Because you can spend years on that. At some point, so we were asking the question in the beginning of the stream, when do we do impact analysis? There is an equally important question, is when do you stop your impact analysis? That's an equally important question. And how do you scope your impact analysis?
mm. So in that sense, doing impact analysis means doing business analysis, means
Yes.
doing data governance, means doing integration governance, means doing iterative architecture.
Mm-hmm.
All of these things contribute to impact analysis and building the practice of doing that impact analysis.
Yes. So usually you end up your day with a kind of a headache, but a good knowledge of the system you're working on.
I remember a few headaches like that when I was working for 8 years with T-Mobile. I knew a lot about all the systems and I could track everything easily.
Yeah.
That never happened again because I was not able to spend that much time in one company, which
And
basically means that,
and
yeah,
this is where human interaction also is priceless, because you need to have good relationships with the teams from other systems,
right,
so that when comes to shove, you can drop a Teams message saying, "Hey, we are having this bug, or we are going to implement this change there. I know this goes through your system. Please
hmm,
have a look and tell again about the blast radius. Tell me if the blast radius is going to hit the fan in your system too." Um, so if you are used to work with those teams, it's going to be very fast, and someone knowledgeable is going to tell you, "Yes, I'm going to have a look at it," or "Believe me, it won't have an impact." If you don't know those people, even engaging them and getting to the point where you speak the same language is work that needs to be done before impact analysis. Because guess what? When you are specialized on a technology, the way when you're shifting technology, you're completely shifting culture and vocabularies and lingos and ways of thinking. So the biggest work is actually not the tech work, is getting aligned and making sure that when we say car in one system, it means car in the other system, and not how to buy.
right.
Yeah.
That very, very far neglected semantic coupling, the
Yes.
conveyance of meaning. Yeah, that's one of the hardest parts of work, I suppose, in general. The bigger the organization, the harder it becomes.
So it depends. So we are deviating from the topic here. It actually depends on the culture of the organization. When you
True.
are working in an organization that has a very collaborative culture,
Hmm.
it takes time to build those relationships actually, but soft skills are part of the company culture. So with iterative attempts and iterative engagement, you always get to the point where you can build those relationships and build those bridges between the teams and the systems. If you are
Yeah.
working in a toxic environment or in a very competitive structure, actually, those are very difficult to do because knowledge is power.
And
And
then you end up with passive aggressive tickets in Jira, ServiceNow, or whatever else.
awfully aggressive, awfully aggressive,
Or fully aggressive, yeah.
awfully aggressive. Um, and this is where, and it comes from a former communications manager perspective. This is where in IT, I can see now the shift of mindset regarding soft skills. Soft skills
Hmm.
used to be very frowned upon because they were not tech skills, but
Right.
actually, soft skills are a huge part of what makes IT projects successful. We are
Hmm.
talking about communication skills, we are talking about empathy, we are talking about a positive communication, we are talking about being solution oriented and not blame oriented. All those things that actually help teams and projects thrive as opposed to um, being in a constant conflict. And impact analysis is really built upon soft skills.
Right.
If you are at odds with your product team, with your BA team, with your development team, with your integration team, you cannot do impact analysis. That's impossible. That's absolutely impossible because no one is going to give you the information.
And then that really ties into what I mentioned about going off rails. It really ties into the environment, the toxicity or
Yes,
lack of thereof of the environment, and also to the aspect of psychological safety.
exactly.
Because if people in certain teams are not having that psychological safety, that means they're going to clam up and not give you anything because they will not want to interact with you because they will be feeling threatened.
And
And
they will only interact in a very aggressive or passive aggressive way.
mm, right. Uh, thought escaped me. I had a thought, but
It will
uh,
come back. No, don't worry.
someday, definitely. Okay, yeah, because I do remember my colleagues back in the day when I was still a junior. I had colleagues that stated quite often that they didn't go into IT to work with people, and I was and you know reflecting on that those years back, I'm like thinking, how wrong were they? Because
Hmm?
now that I work as an architect, the majority of the things I do is work with people.
Yes.
And looking at the core problems of software architecture, those core problems are not technical problems, not even architecture problems. They're working with people and
Yeah.
aligning people and figuring out what does who want and or need. More emphasis on the need because want is not always expressing the actual need.
Yes. Again, context. It depends from who is expressing the requirement, who is expressing the need,
Yeah,
and this is where you need to navigate the environment, right? But I think this is more of an architect problem than a developer problem, actually.
true.
Um, Developers are in a position where they can focus on their work and their code and their features that they need to deliver because they they have their tech leads and their architects. Whoop.
A screen is trying to turn off.
Okay, okay. But as architects, this is our job actually to be in the middle, right? This is our
Yeah,
job to discuss with business stakeholders. This is our job to discuss with executives. This is our job to discuss with other IT stakeholders. This is our job to discuss about budget. This is our job to discuss about planning. This is our job to discuss about so many things. That if we don't build that soft skill layers, as architects, we will not last long. And on top of that, and I remember I took that first O'Reilly architecture. They were talking about what you're expert in, what you don't
Hmm.
know, and what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
And the more senior you are, the more it's easier for you to say, I know about it, but I don't know it.
Yes.
And it takes a lot of soft skills and to self confidence to say that actually.
Very true. Yeah, it is. I know that Mark Richards and Neil Ford, they represent this as a triangle, where the
Yes,
top part of the triangle is the things that you know. Then the middle trapeze is the things you don't know, which they call the knowledge breadth.
yes.
And then the bottom trapeze is the things
You don't know.
you don't know,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
basically beyond your what I would call the border of ignorance.
Mm.
And the goal for every architect is to move that border of ignorance as far as away as possible,
Yeah.
which is an impossible task on its own, because we're not perfect machines. We cannot learn
Indeed.
everything. That's
Indeed. Indeed.
simply not feasible.
And with the age of AI, that treadmill is going faster and faster.
Unfortunately for us,
But yeah,
yes.
in Poland, in my presentation, I was giving this example of a workshop I did in Tunisia actually with another Salesforce architect, Melissa Hildes,
Hmm.
and we did prepare the workshop. We were proud about us. We prepared the workshop 2 months ahead,
Hmm.
and when we did the dry run for the workshop the day before, we were appalled because what we put in the slides was no longer relevant. Things have moved so fast that we have to
No.
simplify a lot the presentation.
Mm.
So the things we thought we knew about were no longer relevant. So in the things you don't know, actually there is now an extra layer is that the things you don't know and that are still may still be relevant or not.
Ah, I suppose the same goes to the things you know you know.
Of course, of course. This is why
Hmm.
you have certification maintenance, right?
Well, yeah, true. But yeah, just thinking about literature, the this part of the conversation of soft skills really, I think that the highlight of it is a very lovely book by Gregor Hopp, the Software Architect Elevator. I think it's one of the best pieces on the topic of the role of an architect nowadays, in terms of how an architect should behave, what an architect should do, and what skills we as architects should focus on to be efficient and effective, or the other way around, effective and efficient, uh, because that's going to be the key with the shift that's going on right now. Uh, and it's been always like that, but the speed at which things are changing is very much different. So uh, the more effective communicators we are,
Mm.
the better, the easier we're going to adjust to the reality in that sense. Uh, in 10 years back, the speed of change wasn't that fast. So basically, even if you weren't a great communicator, you could still keep up.
Yep.
Now it's more and more relevant. It was always relevant, but now it's even more so in that sense.
What is funny, and when I started as an architect in 2022, my mentor told me you need to build an architecture. When you're building an architecture, you need to think of the 5 next years.
Okay.
1 year later, it was you need to think of the next 3 years. 1 year later, 2024, you need to think of the next 18 months. And
Okay.
now, say, you need to think of the next maybe 6 to 12 months. So the speed of iteration of architecture is also different.
That's true. The change of a business model, change of the business, change of the context reality
Yes,
mandates a different pace of changing the architecture. The question only is, can we actually facilitate with proper changes following in IT systems? And that's
not
a completely different problem space.
and to be honest, not always, right? Um,
Of course.
I'm thinking of how protective the team I work with, how we are protective about data integrity,
Hmm.
and sometimes we go down to scrutiny on some things because we want to make sure we are not introducing any corruption in the data layer. That actually data integrity is being kept because we know that sooner or later we are going to have to implement some AI capabilities. So you need the data to be ready.
Right.
And actually, this is the only layer on which we can ensure that we're working for the foreseeable future. All the other layers, they are moving and they are moving very fast.
And through that, we also can use impact analysis to see what's going to be impacted by those moving layers and
Yeah.
everything else. I mean, there is this concept of model drift, and it's kind of a running joke, but then again, it's very true that what is attributed to George E.B. Box that all models are wrong, but some are useful.
Yep.
And now we always think in models because that's the human nature. We oversimplify things just to comprehend them enough to go by.
Mm-hmm.
And then IT is no different. We model things, and those models will be wrong, but they're a useful approximation of reality. The thing that happens now is that those models are not only wrong, they're not only a useful temporary approximation of reality. The moment we model the reality, the model is already
The
wrong
shift.
because
Yeah,
the reality moved on. So we have that model drift,
exactly.
drifting away from reality at light speed at times.
And
And it's very problematic to catch up.
exactly, and this is one of the limitations actually of impact analysis because you know what you know and you have the information that you get. And when you are thinking, okay, I'm good with integration with that system, but you
Hmm.
are not aware that there is actually a project that is going on to make that system evolve. And there are dependencies between what you are doing and what the team on the other system is doing, but they
Hmm.
don't have a target roadmap. So you know it's going to be moving if you know it, and you don't know when. So this is one of the limitations, right? And the limitations is always the human organization, always.
Yeah, the biggest
So
problem in software architecture, the first biggest problem in software architecture are always human beings.
this is not a problem. This is a challenge to solve. Like we are not the problem. Come on. But so because we talked about why impact analysis, why it is important, how to do it, and how it's going to change, what are the impacts on AI, we did not talk about the limitations of impact analysis.
Yeah,
And actually the limitations of impact analysis is you only know or you only learn the data that is available to you, the information that is available to you.
right.
You need also to go and fetch that information. You're not going to be spoon fed, of course, but the the team that are working in the company, they only know what they know, and
Right.
and they cannot guess the future. So at some point you can think, okay, we are going to implement that change. It's not going to have a huge impact. You go ahead, you implement the change, you do all the testing, it goes in production, and 2 weeks later, you learn that there is this huge project somewhere in the company that is going to shift everything. That's the limitation
Yeah.
right here, right now. So impact analysis is like a snapshot of a context at a given time.
And then it depends on you as a person, as a specialist, architect,
Mm.
business stakeholder, whoever you are, to have developed your sources of information.
Yes.
Whatever those sources may be, would that be other people? Would that be documentation? Would that be impact maps, tools,
And it,
logging system, log
yeah.
aggregators that you derive information from, whatever that may be?
And
And
you
and
know what,
that's always that
Carol?
limitation.
The easiest way to keep track of that is to bookmark them. I mean, that's the easiest way, the simplest one, because most of the time, all your resources are going to be online.
Unless they're human beings.
Yeah, yeah. But so if you get information from human beings, logically you document the information, so you can keep
True.
track of that. So again, bookmarks and bookmark architecture and bookmarking strategy, blah 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 blah. Um,
Mind maps. I use Mural to document my immediate surroundings, for example, on a project,
yeah,
just to have it a visual component. So
yeah.
I have a 2D component I can move around and yeah, I don't know, create a mind map, create a diagram very swiftly.
But I always try to keep my main sources of information in my bookmarks, and I have a very specific bookmark folder, so I can get to them very quickly, and I can check the some of the impacts. It does not absolve me from using impact analysis tool and doing the proper research, but it gives me an insight. Like, do we
Right.
have impact there? Do we have it? Tack, 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 and then I can go through that faster.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at my notes. I've been making notes throughout the conversation. So just to sum it up, because we've been at it for over 2 hours,
Yep.
it's that long already.
Yep.
Impact analysis always needs to start somewhere. So we start usually where the bomb blew up or the change happened or
Yep.
whatever is doing. Of course, you can do it preemptively so that your point of that core, that impact can be of your choice or can be mandated by the situation, right? And we're looking in impact analysis, then we're looking at which system is impacted or which application, the users, what users are impacted, if there are any, and what processes or business processes are impacted uh, through the change, through the bug, through our preemptive analysis. Further on, to do impact analysis, we utilize whatever we can,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
Documentation, network, relationships,
Visual
logs,
Studio Code.
metadata,
Yeah.
code, anything that is accessible to us that can provide information and metadata. And obviously, we can build automation processes around that to gather that based on query searches, etc., to make that happen. And then what we need to do is go by the thread and find what are the dependencies, and we find that through again business processes, all sorts of automation,
Yeah.
integration, validations, looking at the usage of data models, looking at the usage of specific data, looking if available at integration governance, data products if we're doing data mesh, etc., and then looking into how that data is used and basically asking relevant questions to whoever is using that data in different systems. And with that, we can either do mitigation of the blast radius or we're doing root cause analysis because we already have a blast and we try to figure out how not to have it again.
So we can. So Yeah, we either go the mitigation route or we
Mhm.
decide to let the blast radius go its course and then we do root cause analysis.
I think that sums it up pretty neatly.
Yeah.
And of course, then the not the tool, but the framework for this is active research, right? Did I
Yeah.
get that right?
Action
Yeah.
research. Action.
Action research. Action research. Yeah.
And
Action research. And through action research, we can uh, work out our process. What would be
yes.
the process of
Yeah.
improving? Would be the process of impact analysis, and build iteratively our own individual framework based in our specific context of team, company, business unit, whatever that may be the actual scope of
Mhm.
work that we're doing.
Yep.
Hey, sounds like quite a nice list derived from this conversation. So we actually have a bit of a frame of reference, a framework to begin with.
For your book, for our book.
For everybody who's listening and want to start doing impact analysis to make their life a little bit simpler.
Yeah. So what was left, but I understand why, is that the use so how to do impact analysis on AI, which is a shift, right?
Yeah,
And how to use AI for impact analysis also.
I
Because
think that's a very large topic on its own,
yes,
and it's probably going to be we would be sitting there here till morning to try to
no,
debate how to
no,
do
no,
that.
I have a long day tomorrow. No, thank you.
That said, before we jump off stream, a few shameless advertisements. So coming up next week, we're talking about the defense of technical excellence. So we're going to be working with causal loops, and this is a session with a returning guest to the live stream, Chris Simon, technology coach and advisor, the creator of Contextive. So we're going to change the angle. We're not going to be talking about ubiquitous language this time, or living language. We're going to talk about technical excellence and why is it quite important in IT ecosystems, in software architecture, etc. So tune in next week on the 16th. That's not going to be a Wednesday. That's going to be a Thursday for a change. And then, of course, if you want to learn about any upcoming events, including loosely coupled but not limited to, QR code on the left, upcoming events at Bridging the Gap EU.com, conferences, live streams, all sorts of things, including also workshops. And in terms of workshops, the middle QR code leads to the strategic integration design with DDD, our key workshop at the moment. We're teaching how to do integration architecture, think in terms of ecosystems, dependencies to other systems, how to manage the interactions between systems, and use domain-driven design to do so. And of course, if you're new here, your first time at the stream, you reached this point after, well, over 2 hours, way over 2 hours, please do subscribe. It would be always fun to have that number pop up a little. But if you don't, that's also fine. But if you subscribe, at least you'll be notified by YouTube that we're streaming live with another hopefully interesting topic. That said, Frederic,
yes,
thank you very much for being here. It was a pleasure to chat about impact analysis.
yeah.
Quite a fun topic. I enjoyed the topic very much. So thank you for reminding me that this topic even exists, because I kind of forgot for a moment. So great to get a
For once you
refresher.
are making my point.
Yes, I'm making your point. That's very true. But this starting this topic really triggered me to dig down into my impact analysis patterns that I've developed years ago for integration architecture, and just to start doing a refresher in that with my current knowledge and my current research on ecosystem architectural styles, which is another Pandora box that I just opened, and it's going to take a lot of research time to actually develop the new versions of this, because if I look at, and I have the folder, Google Docs folder, Google Docs, Google Drive folder with all these old images created like at least 6 years ago open, and I'm like, yeah, that was good stuff, but it's so not up to date. I need to do a refresher. So thank you for the trigger. It's going to now consume my life for the next few months to just build up this research. So that's it. Thank you all for joining. Hopefully you had fun and it was an informative session. And see you everybody on the next stream.